leader of the crew.
I,
Okay, I think I did it right that time.
against all
Unfortunately, it's Nick.
Hey,
against
we'll
all
be able to
odds,
take
I was
questions
able
and
to
stuff
wrangle
live
them
this
together.
time, which will be nice. So, okay. Previews coming up. We should be live. There we go.
Hey, what's going down?
Anybody else lose Evan's video, or is it just me?
Only whenever he comes up on the big screen's weird.
Oh my gone?
Maybe.
For me, you are.
Well.
Maybe that was me intentionally blocking you, though.
All right. Well, yep, we're live. There's people already tuning in. So this is what, episode
11.
11. I have completely lost count.
It is episode 11.
And we have special guest Jared or Sweda with us this time around. So
What's going on?
You gonna record this as well, Nick?
Yeah, I can. Hold on.
Right. There's like a delay, so every time I look over and see you raising your hands on the screen next to me.
There we go.
I don't know. Are you coming up on your screen, Evan?
Yeah, and I see it on the stream too. Google just hates me. Or
Can you not?
It picks and chooses who gets to see my camera.
Can you not record it locally while you stream?
Well, it looks like it is because it's saying it's. I have the option to stop recording, so it's already going.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's the case because I can't record because I can't see you.
Oh, well, if not, we'll just
All right,
push this
Evan,
whole
you're
thing to YouTube from Twitch.
Yeah.
Attention, we have technical difficulties.
That's all
Per
this show's
usual.
about is technical difficulties.
Hey, we're here to talk about design, not video equipment. It's
We're not
not
engineers.
Technical difficulties.
We're not Geek Squad.
She'll be back shortly.
All right. Well, Nick, you do the intro.
Okay. What is up, guys? Welcome to the first live edition of Ctrl+Z Cast. We've got the usual suspects, Evan Eckerd and Soar Rated, or Call Me Rated X, whatever your flavor of Zach. He is here.
That was the greatest intro I've ever had.
Right? You'll never live up to it. But also, we have special guest Jared, or Sweda, as you may know him, and very happy to have him on for this special live stream episode.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for jumping in, bud.
Yep.
So what do we got?
So Jared, we kind of we go over frequently how we all got started in design and the various fields that we're in. So for those people who may not know you or just may not know your backstory that much, kind of fill them in on what it is you do and how you got started.
Well, it's a long story. Where do you want me to start? Sweda or all the way back?
Go all the way back, man. We got plenty of time.
Okay, all the way back. So I've been drawing since I can remember. Decided in high school to take a graphics class. I think I was in 10th grade. Graphics teacher asked the class, who thinks they can draw? I raised my hand. Me and another kid did. And he said, who thinks they can draw well? And I was all egotistical, and I raised my hand even higher, and the other kid's hand went down. And the teacher asked me to show him my portfolio, and he pulled me aside, and after he looked at my portfolio, he said, I'm going to teach you by yourself, and the class is going to do the curriculum. And this is the start of the year, and what I come to find out was he wanted to focus in on me. He was starting a business outside the school. and he was basically going to teach me all the skills of typography, all the skills of separations, and how I learned typography was the traditional way. I mean, you laid out a piece of paper, you rulered everything off, you illustrated every single one of the letters, and then we were moving into merchandise. So then in order to do separations, you had to do each color on its own piece of acetate. So I went through an entire year of this really intensive training of learning graphics. At the end of the year, he offered me a job at his graphic shop. And then I think I was maybe 10th grade. 11th grade when I came back, it was the same thing. I took his class again, and that started my entire trajectory of taking my illustrative skills and pouring them into graphic design. And from that point on, every job that I'd ever had after that was in graphics, in design, in some way, shape, or form. I tried to make sure that I never took any other job unless I was using my talent or pushing my skills. So that eventually landed me into a job here in Orlando for a small company. I think it was about $800,000 in revenue a year. But when I walked in for an interview, the company reeked of potential. It was, using some outdated equipment, but the market they were trying to penetrate into was kind of untapped, and I knew I could offer a lot of value. And I spent close to 14 years at the company.
Wow.
And worked I worked my way up. I worked from, the grunt who comes in and sits in the art department and works low-level stuff and low-level clients and, basically does all the stuff that he needs to advance to the next level. And I went to junior designer, then to senior designer, then I worked up to art director and, quickly set my sights on creative director. And after I got that, the company was generous enough to kind of let me breathe and move into other aspects of the company. So I took on marketing director, I took on operations director, and so for 13, 14 years, I just built all my skills, not just in design, but in grooming people, which I absolutely loved, and developing other artists and finding artists, but in marketing as well, in brand management of the entire company, of operations from the time the clients came in through art, sales, through art, through post-production, to production, to out the door. But after 13 years, 14 years, I remember waking up one morning, putting my feet on the floor, and I had topped out in salary. I was pretty much at the top of the company, and the money was great, but and the opportunities were great in the company. But I remember putting my feet on the floor that morning and thinking, deep down what I am is an artist. I mean, I have to create with my hands, and I was creating in the company, but it was all conceptual, sitting in meetings and developing other artists and thinking about brand strategy and marketing strategy and developing the entire art department, but it was so far away from the actual hands-on process that I just made a decision that morning. And I happened to be really good friends with the owner of the company, and I went in that morning and I told him, I said, I love your company. I love all the opportunities you've given me, but the chapter for me being here is coming to a close. And he was very generous to me. He said, how long do you think? And I told him, I said, I don't know. Could be a year, could be 2 years, and I really have no idea what I want to do. I just know that I have to be doing art. And we went back and forth about, art's it's in his perspective, because he was a businessman, art was a low-level technician. There's the technician, there's the manager, and then there's the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur runs businesses, and they manage the managers, and the managers run the technicians, which are the artists, in a business model. And from my standpoint, I'm like, yeah, but it's my passion, so it doesn't fit in your scale of business. It's my passion.
So you're doing little to no actual art at that point?
Yeah, at that point when I was in the company, I'd had probably 13 artists in the art department. I had a freelance crew of 4 or 5 guys, and I was helping marketing and artwork together, so I was also managing the marketing department, and it was great for developing people and putting pieces together and, cohesiveness of the company and strategy, but I wanted to draw, I wanted to create, I wanted to put my hands on a project, you know, and I got so psyched developing artists and watching them put these projects together, but there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't want to jump in and you know, put my skills to use. And so after I told him this, he was very generous, like I said, and you know, I lightly, after I told him, I think 3-4 months later, I just put a blog out there, and I called it Resonate or something, I don't know, I was just fooling around, and I put some art out, and you know, I started to gain a little bit of traction with it. So I said, you know, after 2 or 3 months, I said, you know, why don't I just turn it into a company? And I think I called the first company I had The Three, for lack of any other. There was no knowledge behind it. I just, you know, I wanted to take Resonate, and I was like, I don't know, The Three. I'll just make it into The Three. And soon as I launched the business, I built a little WordPress site. You know, I built up the back end because I knew all about SEO and strategy and, you know, indexing, and so I made sure my site was well equipped to be handled by the search engines, and that my images would get indexed well. And as soon as I started this, you know, little project, I started gaining clients. I'd be coming home from work at 7-8 o'clock, and I'd come home to a ton of emails and clients, and it was just a natural process. I think I kept The Three for about 6 months, and then I sat down and I had a conversation with my wife, and I said, you know, this is my passion, and in order for me to leave the company, it's probably going to be half the pay. And, you know, me and my wife have always journeyed together, and she was like, if it's your passion, if you want to do it, then I'm all on board. Let's go. So I think it was 6 months later I started Sueda, and I think it was 3 months into doing Sueda, I was working like a madman. I'd go to work at about 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock. I'd come home at 5 o'clock. I'd literally walk into dinner, eat dinner, lay down on the floor next to the table, and take a 30-minute nap, get up, go downstairs to the office, work till probably 1 to 2 in the morning, just to make sure I could make the transition into Sueda, and the jobs were coming in. And then when I did that for about 8 months, you know, my wife looked at me and she said, okay, at this point we're roommates, so it's time to jump ship because I don't get to see you anymore. And I was so psyched, and you know, about all the opportunities that my company was giving me. I was literally coming home to projects, and you know, getting to draw, and that fire was lit, and that was it. I went into my boss and I gave them notice, and they were very gracious to me. They gave me a severance package for what I did for the company, which was and they gave me business too. I mean, I left the company, and they gave me a severance package, and they said, you know, we'll also give you work. So it kind of keeps you sustained for a little while until you gain some clients and really get some momentum in the company. And that was it. I've had the company now 3 years, and every year I have growth, and every year the projects get more involved, and the budgets get more involved, and you know, my skills are challenged every day. And you know, I don't make the money I made from, you know, if I wanted to make good money, I would have stayed in the other job. And you know, I didn't pursue this to make money. I pursued it because it's my passion, and I figured if I followed my passion, the money would follow eventually. Just don't pay attention to the money, pay attention to the projects, and you know, your discipline. And like I said, it's been 3 years, and a little over 3 years, and there's not a day that I don't that I'm not thankful I took that risk. You know, I kept thinking to myself, the biggest risk I can take is not taking one. And here's the opportunity before me, and I worked like a dog for it, but here it is before me. Jump. And I did. I jumped. You know, and I still meet with my boss. I meet with him once, or my former boss. I meet with him probably once a month. And from a business standpoint, he's a genius, and you know, he's always giving me input about the business. But you know, it's still not that type of business. It's a business where you put your passion in, and you put your time in, and you focus and your effort, and you push your craft. So here it is, 3.5, little over 3 years later, and like I said, I have no regrets.
So whenever you started The Three, was that meant to begin your transition out of the company into your own company, or was it something to just fill your free time that became something bigger?
No, no, the 3 was definitely the transition from the blog I'd had previously, and I was like, okay, let me jump in and just do, and I don't know why I had this in my head. I was like, oh, just play around and build a company. Let's see what happens. Just to test it, see if it has legs, see if this, my passion and my desire can stand up on its own. Can I prop it up? Can I build this thing? Let's just play around and figure it out. And I think I was playing a psychological game with myself. I'm just playing around building a business, but at the same time, I was working it and putting time into it, and it was my first attempt to, let's see if I can make a business out of this. And as soon as I did, like I said, within a couple of weeks, I started getting hits and little clients, but it was exciting, and it just slowly built from there.
It's kind of funny because we're all kind of at different points on that timeline where in that direction that you were going. I don't know if we're all sort of trying to head towards owning our own business, but it's like you're at your own business part, and Evan's sort of straddling the fence there where he's working at an office for another company but also running his own thing, and I'm just about to get into a design company hopefully soon, and then Zach's in school to eventually become a design company. So we're kind of all on the same plane here, but at different intervals of that journey. It's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah. Well, the great thing is, there's no excuse for anybody who is an artist who wants to have a business not to have one. The advantages we have now with social media and, just an online presence, you can build an online presence relatively quickly. And if you have some skill and some passion and desire, you need some other attributes. You need to know business. If you want to succeed, you can't just rest on great art. I knew when I started my company, I had to look for an entry point. And I looked out at the market, and there was a million illustrators way better than me. So I knew I couldn't penetrate the market through illustration. So then I started to look at typography, and then I thought, there are some people who really stand out in typography, but I think I can penetrate. And then I started doing Google searches to see what images were indexed, and through my management and through my marketing skills, I knew how to get my images indexed well. That's how I got a lot of my clients. Every art director in any company who's looking for outside help is building style guides. And when they build style guides, the first thing they do is they go online and they start looking through images to find relevant images to their brand, to put together a style guide, to go out to feed to a freelance designer. So I immediately knew that I have to get my images ranked as high as possible. So I wanted to own, custom lettering, custom type, custom typography. That's where I wanted to kind of own. So I worked on indexing my images. But there's no excuse. If an artist wants to have a business these days, you have everything at your fingertips. We have Google now. You have questions, you get on Google, you have answers in 5 seconds. Really, that's the way it is. I come from, a little older generation where you had to go to the library and do research, and now you can get all the answers at your fingertips in a matter of seconds, and there's no excuse why you can't do anything. So
you don't have to buy ads in the phone book anymore.
For the newspaper.
Yep.
Yeah, that's out.
Yep. So I was just looking at the chat here, and some people were asking about programs that are good for people who are just starting out, like sketch programs and stuff like that. I know that most of us here are big advocates of Manga Studio, but what are some alternatives?
Well, for me, I get asked this on Instagram all the time. I get asked this in email. I am by no means need fancy equipment. I think this is a $2 technical pencil. I'm a traditionalist by heart. I will sit and draw pen to paper or pencil to paper. I love that relationship. It's just so organic for me. As far as programs, I still straddle Adobe Illustrator because it's industry standard. So if you want to, build graphics for people, especially merch graphics, they're going to ask you for Illustrator files. But I also straddle an old program called Macromedia Freehand, which was dissolved and purchased out by Illustrator, I think, 8 years ago. And it is
Macromedia.
It is still a superior piece of equipment, and I still love it. It's how I learned when I was, in 10th grade. But I'll go from Illustrator to Freehand. But if people are asking, I would tell them just go to Illustrator. Start in Illustrator. And people also ask me if I use a tablet. I've never used a tablet in my life. I don't ever plan to. I love the pencil. I'll draw it. I'll scan it, and I use the mouse and the pen tool. That's it. That's about how fancy all of my equipment gets.
Yeah, I remember the first time I talked to Jared about that, asking him if he used a tablet or if he sketched on screen or anything, and he's like, "Nope, it's click, 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 click until your fingers hurt."
Yeah. If I didn't wear headphones all day, I'd be crazy.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to. Where did the name Sueda come from? I was curious about that.
I was looking for a name for a long time, and I'd exhausted myself. I had this idea that when I heard the name or I found the name, it would be the name, and that gets exhausting if you put so much pressure on finding a name. And I heard a conversation between two people, and somebody's name was Sueda, or they were talking about a place.
Right.
And as soon as I heard the name, what resonated with me is I'd never heard the name before.
Right.
It had a nice flow to it, and I thought, that's what I want in the market. I want a name that when somebody says the name or sees the name, they have no reference points. There's nothing there. They can't connect a dot, or it sounds like this, or it looks like this, because I wanted to build an identity inside that name. I wanted the name to be identified by my art.
Right.
And that's what I was looking for, a name that had no other connections other than I was able to build that name and mature that name over time. So soon as I heard the name in conversation, I was like, that's it, that's the name. I couldn't think of any connections or anywhere I'd ever heard it. And I immediately converted the 3 over to Sueda. And it so happens, I love the name, but as the typographer, especially somebody who does hand lettering, there are certain letters that any typographer will say they love, and there's certain letters that they say they hate.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that I love S, E, and A's. I absolutely hate W's and Y's. And I'm sitting here, I get the name, and I'm like, I love it, I love it. I without even thinking or illustrating, I go down, I convert my business name that day. I'm all stoked about it. I come home, get all the paperwork. I think it's a week later, I sit down to draw myself a logo, and I'm like, holy crap, You picked a name that you love and absolutely hate at the same time. So
that's how my logo came. That's how my logo came as well. It's just like, I hate R's, and I literally just drew it, and that's what happened. That's what it is.
I despise the letter S. It's
I can't do S
bane of
either.
existence.
You can do a lot with S. I like S.
Yeah,
We
I
had
could
this
just never get it
conversation.
to look right.
Yeah. Who was it that? It was Tobias that doesn't like Z's.
Yeah, Toby
Yeah.
doesn't like Z.
So we figured we should all just start trading letters. When we get to that hard part, we'll just say, "Hey, who likes S's?"
Yeah, we said we'll just do like an assembly line of typography, and we all just add our own letter.
Wish it was that easy.
Yeah, no
So-
kidding.
I wanted to kind of go back to that programs for beginners part. Illustrator is definitely the industry standard if you're going to be doing professional grade work. But there's also alternatives that are a little bit cheaper for people that are just starting out and want to kind of sort of build their portfolio to eventually get to where they're doing that kind of professional type work. A good one, obviously, Manga Studio. I know me and Evan have it. Do you have it, Zach?
Nope. I don't really draw much anymore, so I'm even more quote unquote um, old school, shall I say. I learned how to draw on a big sheet of paper, and that's how I keep it. I don't really. I'm not going to school to be an illustrator. I can do it. It's not like I'm not. So, but all my drawings are just big sheets of paper. That's really it, in black and white.
Yep.
So I don't really do anything. If I had to, I could probably do it. But
tablets definitely help for a lot of, they make things quicker, I'm finding, but when it comes to especially typography, I have a hard time doing any type of sketch lettering on a tablet. It doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel like
the thing with tablets is the reason I don't have one is because I don't know which one to get. Like, everybody will tell me, oh, you have to have the tablet where you can see on it, like whatever that one's called, the Wacom, the one where you can actually see what you're drawing on here instead of having to reference your screen.
Yeah.
I think it's called and then, like, some people are like, oh, you don't need it, you can just get the crappiest one and they all work, and then it's just, so it's like, I don't really know what to do, because every time I'm like, all right, I got it, somebody's like, no, don't get that, and I'm like, well, what do I get?
It really comes down to personal preference, to be honest. But
well, yeah, people like to change their mind a lot.
Yeah. Especially you start throwing money at things and like.
Oh right, and then
buy something? You're like, oh, that one sucks. Don't get that one. You're like, oh, great, I just spent $600, $700, $800.
Right. Well, no, what's that one where Evan, you have it where you can see what you're doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to have that one. I can't. I tried the other ones, but I can't.
Like, I don't have any, and I know that one's like what, $600, $700, $800.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, but I can't.
Right, and
I can't
like,
look up
me,
at a monitor and draw on the desk. I just can't coordinate myself to do it. So I have to see. I have to look at what I'm drawing at. So for me, that's the only way I could do it. Otherwise, it just looked like I'd try to draw and I'd watch my mouse go all the wrong ways on the monitor and just get mad. And
I'm still like in the middle where I'm using my tablet to do things whenever I have a lot of time to go slow and figure out what I'm doing, because I have the Intuos, so I have to look at my monitor while I'm drawing, which is still just like writing with my right hand, but I also do most of my vector work with a mouse and keyboard.
Oh, yeah.
So
trying to do vector work with a tablet is a nightmare. I don't know how you can. It especially when you're laying points down and you can't, like, you're coming back over. And you can't see because your hand's in the way, so at least with the Cintiq. So vector, yeah, I've just always stuck to a mouse. But got huge respect for Jared, who can click the mouse that many times and not go nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hours and hours.
That's how I learned too. It's actually kind of funny. That's what I do. But I just finally, it's like I think all of us do. I have some ADD, I'm not gonna lie, but so like when I sit there, I can't sit. I can't do it for longer than an hour.
Somebody said in the chat, I'm digging all these beards. I think Zach's is the nicest to soul patch.
Well, that or this one. I mean, this one's awesome.
Somebody's trying to figure out what's wrong with your eye patch. So.
Yeah, nothing to do. And there's a handlebar mustache too.
That's classy. It's classy right there.
So how about styles? What styles you guys been catching your eye lately that you've seen around the web?
I've always been a big fan of vintage type stuff, especially typography. But lately, I've kind of I don't know if you saw the sketch that I did recently of that face.
Yeah, more
kind of looks like a younger person, but it's kind of like going into the weird. Doing my sketching and stuff like that, it's kind of going into more of like the quirky, sort of cartoonish type artwork that I'm digging right now.
You know, right now for me, and I think it's just because of some of the stuff I've been designing lately, is graffiti.
Oh yeah, yep.
I really have been into it. The only problem is that, again, I don't have a tablet, so I can't draw my own. So I kind of just manipulate, different fonts, and I kind of, add on to them in Illustrator, and I kind of come up with like a cool-looking flow to it, and then I just, I design away. But yeah, that's what I've been really into. I really have been into like that, like, when you go, because I was actually just in, Evan knows, and I'm sure a lot of people, I was just in California for the first time. I remember in LA there's like this whole area where it's just a whole wall of graffiti, and it was legal to do it on that wall. Like, it wasn't one of those things where it was illegal or whatever. And I just remember seeing, all the bright colors and just how you could barely read it, and I just saw that was, really cool. So I tried to recreate that into like, my own little thing. It looks kind of cool.
How about you, Jared?
Well, I acclimate because I'm a traditionalist. I mean, I've always pencil to paper, so I acclimate towards more illustrative people. And it's not of lately. I mean, it's of always. I'm always looking at Aaron Horkey's work. It's just it blows my mind. And I can sit and look at his work for hours and hours, and how he shades and the discipline it takes. Or kind of also reminds me of like Joe Mad, comic book artist. Same thing. You look at his pencils, and they're incredible.
Yeah.
I started my company out with typography, and I'll always love type. I used to write graffiti. I've always been into lettering. Always, that'll always be part of me. But as an illustrator, and my company, the demand is starting to move more towards illustrative pieces. So I spend a lot of time now looking after illustrators. So,
about you, Evan?
Hard to say. It has been more of the been looking more at like just logos and icons and stuff for the past couple weeks, and just trying to figure out how to simplify things and make it still make sense is what I've been looking at lately. So just a lot of icons like that, but which is tough. I don't know. Some of the logo types and things that I've come across is just I don't know. It's like if you got one little curve wrong, the whole thing would just fall apart, and it boggles my mind how they can just be that precise and get it to come through exactly like that. And then the other guys like Florian Bertmer and there was one other guy. There's a couple artists I've been watching where I'm just amazed at like how much ink they can put on a piece of stock or a canvas and have it look like something, and not have it all just a big puddle of ink, and still have something cool out of it. And so there's a couple artists I've been watching like that that are just able to lay down all that ink and have it just be super detailed and super crisp, and just do crazy stuff like that. And then just looking at the the patience they have to do that stuff blows my mind. So that's probably the two styles lately that I've been looking at, which are totally different ends of the spectrum. But yeah, that's the what's been getting me motivated these days, which is
that's interesting what Evan said about a lot of people will hit me up on Instagram and they're like, oh my God, what you do, it looks so great and all that detail. How do you do all that detail? And they think it's difficult, and for me, it's not. And I think Evan said something just a few seconds ago, which I think is true. I'm always tested in this area to do a simplified logo. If one thing is off in that logo or that emblem, if one point is off, if the composition is off, if the type is off, in the simplest things, your eye immediately recognizes it.
Mm-hmm.
But in something that's complex, like what I do, I'll look at my art constantly, and I'm constantly picking out all the things that I did wrong. But from anybody else's vantage point, they can't see it because there's a million things going on. So I'm always challenged by that. Like when he said, you know, I'm trying to do more simplistic logos, I think my comment was good luck. You know, I hate doing simplistic logos, and I always feel like there's something seriously wrong with me. I cannot sit down and do something really simplified. I will always continue to work on it. So I think that's kind of interesting. That's one of the things I meet with one of my friends who used to be my creative director. I meet with him every Friday. His name's Chip David, and the guy is super creative, super talented, and him and I have almost polar opposite styles. He's very simplistic in nature, and I'm very complex in nature. And you know, I look at his stuff, and I'm always just baffled. The composition's always right, and the simple forms and the simple ideas come through with excellence. And you know, if I went to try that, it would look like, I had a spasm on a piece of paper or something. It would totally look ridiculous. So.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that they drew inspiration from Evan and Sueda's illustrations and stuff like that. And I myself, whenever I first started YouTube, Evan was one of the first artists that I found, and I really enjoyed his work. And the thing that I admire about what you guys do is the detail work, but the problem I have is I can execute the details, but it's generating the ideas for the detail that I struggle with. So if I'm drawing from reference art, I can do that, but if I'm trying to conceptualize something myself and add those finite details, I kind of get stuck a little bit in what should I add and what shouldn't I add, what's going to be useful to the piece and what's just going to be distracting. You guys have any tips on how to get over that?
Well, there's a trick I use. I'll illustrate a piece, and if I like the piece, but I'm thinking, like you're saying, what other elements can I add? And I don't want to jump on the piece and destroy the piece. I grew up in graphics where you are constantly using a light table, and I still use a light table. So if I like a piece, I'll immediately think, what else can I add to this? If I want to wrap a snake or put arrows, whatever elements, and I think it might work, I'll just lay another piece of paper over top of it, and I start sketching over top of it just to kind of conceptualize with my hand.
Yep.
To see if those elements are going to work. And if they do work, then I just get back on the original piece and go to town. If it doesn't work, then I've always saved the integrity of the original. That's that's one of the tricks I use.
I was always pretty blown away by a tattoo artist buddy up north. He just, maybe it's just from being in that industry for so long or whatnot, but like you come up to him and ask him, or I'd watch a customer come up and say, I want something kind of like this, and it would just be like a couple things, and then he'd go back and he'd come back out and it'd be those two things, but all tied together with other stuff, and it was just to watch him be able to craft all these, even little things like, he'd maybe pull in like a chain link going one way, or just some sort of effect that looked more like a shape or element or something, and be able to tie this whole thing together and have it all work. And I struggle with that all the time. Like, I'll be looking at a piece of, at a drawing or something, and there's a bunch of empty spots, and I don't know how to fill it. I don't really know what should go there, and that's, I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Nick, but that's probably at least similar. I mean, that's what I run into, where it's like, okay, this is looking cool, but I don't know what to put here, right? I can't think of, and it's more of having a hard time stepping back and just thinking about the overall theme and trying to, pull in elements that help, strengthen that theme somehow. And I don't know. I feel like I used to be better at it when I was younger, but then I probably wasn't. Just thought I was. It's hard to tell, but yeah. For like when I watch Jared do the badges and the more like emblematic type stuff, and I see all the little details you pulled in of like maybe how you invert text or knock out text in some parts, and then how you kind of cap those off with other elements and just kind of build across it and keep doing it. That's one thing that I find incredibly difficult to do. Just to be able to think of all those little elements that fit together and work, and then to go even further where it works at like different sizes and scales and stays that strong image. So if you got tips on that, I'm all ears.
I think it comes down to repetition. Like I will constantly go out. I spend, in business they tell you to work the rule of thirds. If you own your own business, they tell you a third of your time should be admin, a third of your time should be marketing, and a third of your time should be the actual hands-on, especially if you're an artist, the actual designing. And I always float in those times. I'll spend, you always got to spend about a third of your time, no matter how you cut it up, doing admin work, which, it's the stuff you hate, but it keeps the business running. I spend a lot more time in the actual drawing time and a little bit of time in marketing. But what I sneak in there is the actual research time. I plan for research every day. My Instagram feed, I think I follow maybe 300 people, but I want to make sure that it is rich with content. I want to be fed by innovators. And what I do is if I find something, a technique that I saw some illustrator use or some typographer use, that's it. I'm like a dog with a bone. I want to know how they did that technique. And once I master it, I always have this saying, I used to tell all the artists that I manage, I said, you learn the rules first. You follow all the rules. And then once you follow the rules and you got it, then you break all the rules. And I've always carried that with me. If I see a technique I like, I will sit for the next 5 to 50 projects and try and work that into client art to see if I can master it. And once I've figured it out, then I don't rest. Then the next chapter is, okay, I've done the repetition, I figured it out. Now I try and figure out how can I totally do something on top of it? How can I smash it? How can I change it? How can I flip it? How can I do something against the grain of what I just learned?
Right.
So I think it comes down to repetition. You start doing some stuff, and I'll do it until I master it, or think I master it, and then I try and unlearn all that and figure something else out. Figure how to innovate, even if it's just an inch. Just change something just an inch. Because those inches after time, they start adding up, and all of a sudden you look back at your portfolio and you're like, wow, I moved from what I knew all the way over here to something completely different now. Does that help?
Yeah. It's funny how Instagram has turned into. For me, I used to buy like Juxtapose and used to buy High Fructose and all these art magazines, and the Instagram is pretty much turned into something even better. It's all what I've got. How the people I follow and stuff. It's just one thing after another, where it's just art and art and art, and then some random picture of Josh's kid or something. What were you saying, Nick? I cut you off. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine. I was just going to say, touching on what Jared was talking about making sure that his the people that he follows are rich with content. It's something that we've touched on the show previously about surrounding yourself with people that aren't necessarily designers or graphic designers or whatever, but just creative-minded people. People who are always thinking outside the box, that can generate some ideas if you get stuck, or people who are designers or illustrators or whatever they're doing. Those are the kind of people that you want to follow, because whenever you get into a pinch, or you get some free time and you want to just do some stuff for fun, it's great to have that sort of group of supporting members to sort of keep you on the track of innovation, instead of getting stuck in one thing and doing this one thing over and over and over, and it becoming sort of monotonous instead of fun.
Yeah, totally agree.
How about
So
you, Zach?
one thing I wanted to quickly touch on, this stuff that we're talking about, like adding detail and things like that. A lot of people may think, it's just for illustrators or that specific area of design, but really it does apply to graphic design, web design, typography. The adding details, additional details to your work is always something that you should be working on, because it really does improve your quality of work. Even if you're doing simple stuff, like simple logos and stuff like that, it's just that little attention to detail that can really kind of shove your work over the top. So if you're not an illustrator, this stuff still applies to you, and we kind of try to phrase it in a way to where it can apply to all genres of design. Jared, do you find that it's difficult to do stuff outside of like illustration type things?
No, I was listening to you when you said, about your influences and who you keep close to you, and normal like human psyche is you are the 5 people you hang out with the most, and all that means is, the things you keep closest to you are going to influence you the most.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were talking about your Instagram feed, my Instagram feed is filled with maybe half of them are traditional, pen or pencil to paper artists. The other half are photographers, sculptors, painters, all different types of art, because for what I do, I specialize in custom lettering, custom illustration, and merchandise development. Brands come to me and they want merch lines, but I'm pulling from, I would think it would be completely narrow-minded, and I'd burn myself out if the only thing I was looking at was illustration all the time.
Right.
So I have all types of influences around me. And I also keep, the meetings I go to with my friend on Fridays. That is another point of inspiration. We spent 2 hours in conversation, and just the ideas and the concepts we talk about challenge my art. And they're off-topic art. We're not talking about art. We're talking about concepts of life or family or just any type of concepts that are unrelated to art, but I'm always trying to apply that back to my craft. How is it challenging me? How am I going to push in a different direction? I'll see somebody do something with sculpting or photography, and the lighting and the photography, and it challenges me that how can I drag that kind of lighting into one of my illustrations? How can I change up or alter what I'm doing?
Yeah, it's that's probably what I should do. I used to keep an eye on a lot more photography and such, but I haven't for a long time. And some of the coolest, it's cool to see some of those photographers do that still do everything, like the crazy lighting and get the effects up front rather than post-production, seeing how that stuff's done. But trying to tackle that and bring it into a vector like you're doing in Illustrator, man, that's a challenge in itself.
Yeah, I would say so.
Illustrator's programs is still kind of black magic to me.
Well, when I started my company, I wanted the focus to be on, I know it's going to sound selfish and self-indulgent, but it was on my craft. I wanted to perfect my art. I love what I do. It's an outlet for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. So I never wanted it to be about business.
Right.
I would always I plan on keeping my business at a certain level. I don't want to, because the more income means the more time. And I'm also jealous about my time with my family and my personal time. Art is one dimension of who I am, but I want to spend my time there. But, I want to keep pushing my craft. And I think we just lost Nick.
Uh-oh.
We did.
He'll dial back in.
We lost our moderator. But what I was saying is I will always continue to push in my art. There's been so many times that a client has approved a piece of art, and I never felt like it was finished. You know, I felt like we were in a rendition, and I will sneak back into that file after it's paid for, after it's approved, after it's been shipped off, and they're using it, and I'm catching myself at lunchtime. Lunchtime is one of my play times. I'm either playing, sketching, or I'm playing with ideas or concepts or mashups. I'll find myself in an older file of approved art, and I'm adding stuff to it because I think it's not done, and the client's already paid for it. And the way I rationalize that is, it's my craft. I want to keep pushing to find new things and keep developing my abilities. Mm-hmm. So I'm always pushing it.
Do you do?
And of course, that's a waste of time, and every smart businessman will tell you that's a complete waste of time.
Like, how often when you're working on something do you take a step back and give it the bird's eye view and just see where you need to go next?
Yeah, all the time. I switched up how I work probably about a year ago. Instead of carving out an entire day to do one job, what I'll do now is I like to work on multiple illustrations. I like to sit down and do a sketch for one, and instead of working it all the way through from a rough sketch to a final sketch to the vector, baseline, and then all the detail, and then all the color, which would take me anywhere from 4 to 8 hours based on the complexity of the project. Now I'll sit and do a sketch for one job, run back, do the baseline vector for another job, run back, maybe do some detailing in another job. And what I'm doing is I'm giving those pieces kind of in my head and visually me an opportunity to let everything breathe, instead of just micromanaging the idea or the concept. I give it some time to breathe. So I'll work on it over 2 or 3 days rather than stomp it out in one day. And I find it gives me the opportunity to, the next day when I come back to the computer and I open up the file and it comes at me, I get to see it fresh again. Right. I'm not on top of it, managing this thing to go in. I get to see it fresh again. So, and I switched it up, I think it was last year, and I'll tell you, for me, I'm always looking for ways to switch things up and keep it fresh. For me, it really helped my illustrative ability because I never felt rushed anymore in my drawings. I could always, I schedule, I'm a under-promise, over-deliver. So I would tell them 3 weeks, and really I can get it done in 2. So I'm really it gives me the opportunity to work the idea and work the concept. So, so from a bird's eye view, I do it all the time now. And I think for me, it's absolutely crucial to the end result of the project.
Yep. Yeah, I was I found, and totally just by accident, but what I used to do was just sleep on it. Usually just sleep on it and get up and. But I found that could be hit or miss sometimes. I guess it depended on how awake I was the next morning when I opened the file to see if I could identify what was going on with it or not. But the other method I just found out, and it's probably not a very, as far as a business tactic, it's not very good. But when I post something to a social network of artwork that's either that's a work in process, but I'm at one of those points where like I probably tricked my brain to think that I'm done, and then once I post it and then go back, an hour later or something, seeing it on just a different, seeing it load up from Twitter, or seeing it load up from a Facebook page, or seeing it load up from from YouTube or something, and it's like, oh, I'll like screen grab it, or I'll take it back in and then just start circling areas that I wanna fix, areas that aren't right. But it's kind of I found that I'm able to catch more doing that, but on the bad side of things is that I've just made it public, so I can't do that with everything. But that was kind of funny, it's for some reason just seeing it load up from a different website helps me identify just other places that I should put more focus on and such. So
we're talking about designer's block.
No, just stepping back and seeing what, like, you know, you'd be working on a design and you think you're getting pretty far, and then step back and look at it, you know, from the 10 feet away and really see, okay, what did I miss? What needs to be improved on? What, you know, what goes where? Is that lighting wrong? Is, you know, you know, and it's something that it's real. I've also found that it's real easy to get into the habit to stop doing it if you're just rushed all the time. So
yeah. I actually have dummy accounts set up on every social media network that I used, that I don't follow anybody or post to at all, that I just use strictly for testing stuff in different mediums. So that's how I usually do it. With websites, I have a test server on my server that I publish to, and on all the social media stuff that I do, I have dummy accounts set up that I don't use for any other purpose than testing.
Yeah, testing is it. Yeah, definitely. When testing something functional, or just like when I'm testing banners, you know, banner art, I've got other channels that I'll upload it to, and even just to make sure that Google will let me upload it half the time and not throw me a big stupid error.
What position.
File size
you never
is
know
too
what
big when it's
position
half the
YouTube's
size
gonna give
of
you.
what the, you know, max is. Yeah, same thing with like websites and such. You know, there's dev servers and getting environments set up to test those items and see if they're going to work. But as far as the for art pieces, I don't know. It's a harder one to test, in my opinion. You know, or just to see if it's working all the way.
There's another method. I mean, but you have to be really, really careful with this. For me, it kind of works. You know,
Yeah.
I've got a little bit of ego in my art, but when you're working for clients, you know, your ultimate goal should be to get them something that represents them. You know, what they purpose for, what they can move as their merchandise represent their company. And you can only do this with certain clients. But I just had a client that I worked with, who the art director for the project was a great art director. He knew his brand very well, the brand he was repping. He knew the scope of the project very well, and he knew, you know, he had a very good expectation. So basically, at that point, we're co-laboring. You know, he's got the concept in his head. I've got the talent. I've got to make it come alive. So instead of just me stepping back and trying to find what's with the project, I was able to invite the client in and say, okay, here I am with the sketch. What do you think? Now, I don't do this with a lot of clients because, you know, if this client has no, you know, composition bone in their body or doesn't really know their brand, that's a nightmare. But if you have a solid art director who you're working with, I utilize that to the fullest extent because I feel like we're co-laboring, and ultimately I got to get him something that he knows will rep the brand really well and move. He's going to move units because 99% of what I do sits on a garment, you know, or reps a brand.
Right.
So working with that art director, he's able to look at it and go, hey, if you just did this and this, and I love working with other creatives to get their perspective because, you know, you end up as a designer, everybody goes through it, you get tunnel vision about your project. You get kind of boxed in.
Yeah.
And then if you have another creative who can come in and they have a fresh perspective, it can light the project on fire again, you know, or it can take it in a direction and actually challenge your ability and push it in another direction. So, like I said, you got to be very careful. I never do that. And you can assess, the clients I work with, I can assess pretty quick, okay, this guy has absolutely no idea. There's no way I'm leaning on him. This is 100% me. And then there's other art directors. I'm like, oh, great. This guy has a full depth knowledge of his brand, what he wants. This is a collaboration. This is going to be good. And I love working with other creatives. So, like I said, it's a touch and go situation.
Yeah.
I see a lot of talk in the chat about talking about freelance work and how to sort of get that kicked off the ground and payment for your work, things like that. It's kind of all related, I think, as far as being a freelance designer, getting paid for your work and your time, and how to sort of get off the ground as a freelance artist.
Well, this is what I would say to that. As an artist, never ever do anything for free or for. I mean, just in my world, you don't do that. And the reason you don't do that is because I've always lived with the idea that if you don't put a value on your art, nobody ever will. Nobody ever will. It's almost like you don't believe in your own skills. And I'm a fake it till you make it. Like when I started pricing my art, the first thing I did was research other artists that I felt were in my range, and I shopped them. I mean, I actually shopped them to kind of find out what their ranges are, and I went, okay, that's where my money is. And it's hard when you're first breaking out in the market and a client comes to you and you're like, my budget is, they tell you this is my project scope, and you go, okay, well then here's what I'd charge you. And it's hard to bite down when they say that's too much. I mean, you have to be able to say, okay, well then when you have the budget, come back to me. And when you start doing that, 9 times out of 10, if you've got a good product, if you're a good designer, they will come back to you. They'll always test you on pricing. I've had more people in the beginning of my career test me on pricing. Oh, well, that's too much. Will you do it for $100 cheaper? No, I won't, because it's my time, it's my talent, and I believe in my product. So you'll get exactly what you want, but you have to pay me for it. Right. So
I don't even have to talk this whole time. You've literally said exactly everything. I mean, it's like I'm just sitting here and just letting you guys talk. Like, you guys are just.
Well,
you're saying exactly. You guys. I mean, it's like you guys are in my head. It's like it's like bad. Like, it's not good. Like, I said this a few episodes ago. I said I do not work for free. I'm sorry. It just does not happen. Even clients in real life. I remember I had to do this whole band posters, band stuff. Guy was like, "How much you charge?" I was like, I gave him an amount. Too much. I was like, all right, well then don't have band posters. I don't care. And then of course comes back and gives me the money. I mean, it's just a lot of it is like, I mean, would you rather, charge cheap and overwork for a really crappy amount of money, or would you rather get a lot more money and extremely good quality work and work less?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, Nick, you should ask Jared about that 3-prong thing we were talking about. I forget what episode that was.
Yeah, that was episode 9. I think we were talking about the one where
you can have quality, price, or speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kill that whole thing. It's about quality. Nothing else. I tell all my clients there, I will not be the fastest. So if you need a project in 2 weeks, that's not happening. I'm about quality.
Yeah.
And this is my pricing. And it's funny, like my pricing is, I handle clients, and I love clients from bottom all the way to top. I work with very high-end clients, like Harley and Under Armour, and they have great budgets, and they're fun to work with. And I work with the lower end, and I love them for different reasons. I love the guy who's just starting out because they're the innovators. These people with their brands are willing to take risks, and they want to push you to the end of the earth in your abilities, and they're fun and risky. And then the higher end clients have a big budget, but you got to stay in their guidelines. Like when I first landed Harley as a client, they had a 5-page non-disclosure, and then a 5-page kind of how to use the bar and shields. And if you varied from any of this, it was like, I work with the guy Robert. He's my connect over in at Harley Davidson. I'm like, dude, I don't know how to read half of this, and if I screw up, is somebody gonna come kill me? Somebody gonna come kill me if I screw up. But going back to budgets, I never ever, with a large end client, I never let them ask me for my pricing. I always first ask them, what's your budget? Mm-hmm. Because large end clients have bigger budgets. And I never want them to ask me, oh, let me see your pricing guide. I never show them my pricing guide. I always go, what's your budget for the project? Because it gives me the first idea of where their budget is, and how much money they're willing to spend or not willing to spend. And it's usually with large end clients, if they approach you, they have a good budget. The lower end clients, I always assess them first, find out what the scope of the project is, the details about them. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, I take a project, you know, not based on money. I take a project based on how it's going to challenge me. I'm at 3 years of my career, and now I'm looking at projects. You know, I'll qualify somebody, and if I feel like it's going to challenge me or push me or I vibe with that project, I'll take that project on. And I don't care I don't care if this guy's just starting out and, you know, it's an MMA line. You know, I hear all these other pretentious designers. Oh, I won't work with them because it's not a large client, or they're stupid. They're not a big name. I can't leverage them on my social networks. And I'm like, I'll piss off. You know, if it challenges you and it's a project you vibe with, I'm all for it. You know, I don't care how big your brand is. If your ideas are big and your passion's big, I'll get on the phone with some guys and I listen to their passion about their brand. There's a part of me, I mean, I get so psyched up, I almost want to throw my pricing out the window and do it for free. I mean, I'd never do that, but that's what gets me stoked about projects, is the passion people put into, you know, their brand, and they're calling me to represent their brand, and the project they have for me is really challenging.
Yeah.
But, you know, I have my standard pricing. I always send them my standard pricing, and 9 times out of 10, they get with my pricing, you know. And if they don't, I tell them, you know, that's unfortunate. Thank you for the opportunity. But when you get the budget and you still want to work with me, I'll be here. Come get me. You know, if not, that's okay. And I'm willing to pass on jobs, you know, if they can't meet my budget. And the truth is, really, I put so much time into my projects, I'm at a loss. I mean, I guarantee if I sat down tomorrow and lined up my illustrative fee into what I actually put into it, I'm at a loss. So I know they're getting their money's worth. That's why it's easy for me to turn them away when they're like, we want you to do it cheaper. And I'm thinking in my head, dude, I'm going to put like 8 to 10 hours into this. I'm really not making that much money at all, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a mystery that a lot of people they're just not aware of, you know, when talking to someone, a designer, artist, or commissioning somebody, is that there's a lot of just research and thinking about it and concepting and just the amount of time back and forth you spend in email with them, you know, a lot of that stuff is, you know, you don't always chalk it up. You try to, but it's hard to quantize everything that goes into it. Like, man,
Yeah.
if I got paid for all the email I answered, you know.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think also it especially with some of the bigger clients, it actually gives them more confidence in you as an artist or a designer if you stick to your guns on the pricing. You know, if you guys get into a negotiation and they try to lowball you and you're like, yeah, sure, let's do it, you know, and you're a little overeager, I guess, for lack of a better term, I feel like they sort of lose a little bit of confidence, like, oh, well, this guy will just jump at anything, you know, whereas if you sort of stand your ground and say, you know, this is the time that I'm going to put into it, and this is what I charge for that amount of time, and that's what we're going to go with, or, you know, I'll have to pass. I think a lot of people respect that and have more confidence in you as a result.
Yeah, it's definitely a respect thing. And a large client, if they feel like they can just get you for anything, you better believe the next time they come back to you, there's almost this expectation that not only are you going to do it for the same price, but now you're going to do it faster. And they almost treat you like a, you know, they almost treat you like you're expendable at that point. They have no respect for you, you know. So I learned quickly, I think it was one of the first larger clients, and it doesn't matter who it was, but, you know, I did take their budget, and I knew it was a little low. And right after I took the project, I had a bad feeling about it. Like, you know, you shouldn't have taken the first pay that was out there. Yeah. And I did the project, and even the vibe on the phone with the art director was even different. It was almost like I was some staff artist that he was just, you know, oh, do this and do this and do this, and I figured it out. I was like, well, I laid down in the beginning of the project. You know, the only one I have to blame for this is me. So I made a decision right then and there that, if they're going to tell me their budget, and I don't agree to it right then and there. I say, okay, I'll take it into consideration. I'll get back to you in the next day or two, and I really think through the project. How many hours am I going to put in this? How much time? What is the usage? I work for Monster Energy, and when I did that project for Monster, I knew that the distribution was worldwide.
Yeah.
So then that's going to reflect in that budget, because that's a mass distribution for the piece of art that I'm doing. That is a selling point for that product. So I knew that, okay, well then their budget needs to be north of probably a couple $1,000 more. And when I went back to them and said, it has to be north of $4,000 more of what you gave me. And they said, we'll get back to you. And then it wasn't an hour later, they got back to me and said, okay, we agree. And I knew it. And it sent a message to me that always put a value and respect what I do. Because if I don't, nobody will,
Yep. What do you think, Zach?
Guys, taken right out of my bed. I just let you guys talk, man.
You gotta have that look like, man, they're just stealing everything I want to say.
Yeah, it's like it's the first time too. Like usually I'm talking. It's just you guys have the show, man. That's amen. Shit.
A lot of it is sort of concepts that we've echoed throughout our shows thus far. Is that exactly what Jared just said. If you don't value your time and your work, nobody is going to. I learned whenever I was younger, and I was really just starting out in getting into graphic design. My uncle came to me, and at that time his wife owned a hair salon, and they wanted to do a logo for it so they could put it on business cards and use it for distribution purposes and stuff like that. And I wasn't even going to charge him because he's my uncle. And, so I just kind of said, sure, I'll do it for $50, because he basically said, I'm going to pay you, so tell me what you want. So I just threw out this random number at the time. And, whenever I finally did it for him, he gave me a few $100s, I think. And he said, value what you do and the time that you spend doing it, because you're the only one that can determine that value. So that's kind of something that's always stuck with me from that point on, is exactly what we're just saying, is you have to value it, because if you don't, then nobody else will.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too, once you put a value on it, it becomes easier and easier. You start to believe your own value. It becomes easier and easier and easier to land those clients and to have those conversations. Like those conversations about budget now are not a big deal at all. For me, this is the budget. For the lower end clients, I throw out my pricing guide, and that's the pricing. For larger end clients, we talk about a budget, and if we agree, which I cannot think of one client that we didn't agree on pricing, like we separated because of pricing. It was never we separated because of pricing. They gave me their budget and their scope of the project. I either agreed with it or upped it, or that's it. I either agreed with it or they upped it, and we went to town. I mean, that's it. Those conversations get easier and easier.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's just sort of getting comfortable with saying no, basically. You just gotta. Some people you just gotta walk away from. If you guys are worlds apart on your pricing, and you're not coming any closer to even meeting a middle ground, if that's something you want to do, then just have the confidence to walk away.
Or even just vibe when to tell if a client's going to be good to work with, or when it's going to be a challenge that you're not up for to work with.
You fire those clients.
Yeah.
I've had way too many.
Well,
it's not like just overwhelming. It's just I know, I've over the years or the many times of experience and kind of falling on my face and realizing it, I kind of now am able to pick out those types of clients before I even start to work for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I do have to say that, experience does help a lot with that. And, if you have, and it has happened to you, I mean, you kind of start to realize it real fast. Like, you're like, okay, I know who I'm not going to work for now. I know, and, you start to pick it up. You really do. And it's one of those things where you're going to just pick up and you just, boom, it's over. You just know right away who you're working for and who you're not.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's true. Any client I've ever had to fire, which in my 3 years doing Suede, it's probably maybe 5 clients. But you're right. I knew it. When I'm in the process of firing them, I always think back, I'm like, you knew it. You knew it before you even took the job. We're going to fire this guy,
It's one of those, it's just instincts. It's like after you do it once, you learn, and then right after that, you're just like, dude, I knew it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And trust that instinct too. If you think, this doesn't sound like, we're gonna gel or be on the same page at all, then just say, sorry, man, I can't do it. It's just gonna end up being a big waste of both of our time.
And that's just more than with design, period. I mean, that's with like Jared was saying about marketing and anything like that. It's just, if you're not gonna mesh, you're not gonna mesh. It's just how it is.
Somebody on the chat was asking, how do you get projects done that you don't really enjoy? Well, first off, do you take on projects that you think you might not enjoy?
No.
No.
I mean, there'll be projects that get steered in a bad direction.
Yeah.
And those are few, but when a project goes in a bad direction, like I'm not vibing with it, I don't feel it. Because at the end of the day, this is what I really feel. I am selfish enough to be like, this is my journey. I'm on art, and I'm trying to push myself. But I'm representing a client's brand. So if a project gets steered in a direction and I'm still not feeling it, or I've lost a passion for it, I will still put everything I can into completing that job, because at the end of the day, they're paying me for something of one of my, my talent, my service. They're paying me for that. And from a conscious standpoint, I can't give off something and be like, I sold them a turd. I dressed a pig in a tuxedo. I made it look nice, but it's still a pig. It's wrong.
Yeah.
But you can tell the project, like, now I don't take on a project. I'll turn down a couple projects a week only because I don't feel like I don't vibe with it, or I don't feel challenged by it, or I don't think I'm the right artist. I just had somebody come to me and ask me to illustrate some structure, the Pantheon or something, and I was just like, I don't do those types of illustrations. That's a very technical illustration about a structure, and they came back at me, no, we really think you're the right person, and I'm always very nice, and I'm like, I'm so thankful you think I'm the right person, but I'm not the right person for this project.
But I can
just not going in that direction. Yeah, so I would say to that person, whoever asked that, I would say, if you don't feel the project, don't take it for the money. I mean, just don't. If it's your craft, you want to perfect your craft. You want to feel good about what you're doing. So don't take on projects that you're just getting through for the paycheck, because it's kind of dirty at that point. And what you're doing is you're creating a turd for money,
Well, I think you sometimes can take projects like that. You kind of, your creativity and the quality of it kind of decreases.
Yeah.
You kind of just, like you said, you just don't feel it, and you're kind of just like, oh, do I really want to do this today? And then you kind of are just all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of hits on another point where knowing yourself as a designer and knowing your limitations is always something that you've got to be aware of, because if you take on something, if Jared had taken that project and tried to draw the Pantheon, and it's obviously outside the realm of what he could do, he could probably do it, but he also knows that that client is expecting the quality that he provides on his other projects in this project that is sort of outside the realm, as he said, of his sort of skill set that he has. And there's no harm in trying something new, but if it's something that you can't do, you're really misleading your clients, and you're going to lose respect. And it just takes that one person to get out there and sort of just lay into your name, and say,
to your
hey,
brand.
this guy does garbage work and charges way too much for it.
Imagine him saying it like that. This guy does garbage work. It's
Garbage, man.
It just takes that one person.
Literally, I opened it up and I thought this was garbage. I mean, this is just yes. I can picture that being said too.
Yeah.
But just know your limitations, right? And just don't take on projects just because you see that $sign attached to it when you know it's not something you can do or execute well.
See, I think if you're a young designer, if you're in school or you're just starting out in the market and you're still getting to know kind of your voice or your niche, then yeah, you should take on projects that excite you, or that are leading you a little outside of your comfort zone or stretching you out a little bit. But where I'm at in my career, it's, I know immediately as soon as I see the scope of the project, it's either something that, I'm gonna exceed that customer's expectation, or I look at it and just go, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah.
But for a young designer, I would say if it pushes you a little bit and you're still stoked about the project, take the project. See where it leads you. Go find. That's the only way you find your voice, is by stretching out into little different areas.
And that's kind of my few illustrations I've done. That's kind of it. I'm not an illustrator. I mean, by any means, I'm not. But I love to get into it. I love trying stuff for new stuff. So somebody came up to me and was like, I need this, and this done. I want my face on it. And I was like, well, do you want me to actually take a picture of your face and put it on there, or do you want me to like cartoon it? Like he said it like, I just want my face there, and I was like, well, that doesn't. I mean, that's not very attractive. I mean, no offense. I buy it. I don't think people are gonna want to buy that with your face on it. And then he was like, no, I want it like cartoon. I was like, oh, so you want to like illustrate it? Like, yeah. So I did it, and it came out great in my perspective, and his perspective, he loved it. But it was just one of those things where it was out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They,
Definitely one of the harder things I've ever done.
So somebody asked earlier in the chat, how do you develop a style? How do you develop your style as a designer? I assume it's geared towards when you're first getting started. How do you decide which area? Design is a broad field.
Well, I didn't. For me, I didn't really. I mean, I've only been doing this since I was 16, so like I have nothing on Jared and Evan, even I think Pixels too. But I didn't really find my niche until like a year ago, and it really didn't come to me until like.
What would you consider your specialty?
I'm just very good with anything two-dimensional and branding it to looking at your making it yours and you can design it and make it look like yourself. I love using dark colors with relative light colors, just how it is. I'm very good at that. I'm not trying to boast myself. It's just that's my thing. I'm very I like that. I like adding that type of feel to it, and I didn't really come across that until last year. But it's one of those things where you do come across it. You do find it. It's just kind of one of those. I don't know.
Sore rated. He's kind of a big deal.
I am not at all, man. No, it takes years and years of I guess replicating some of the things that you like. Not necessarily selling it, of course, because if you replicate something and sell it, that's a no-no. But I've seen so many, some of my favorite graphic designers or logo designers. The guys, I can't think of the guy's name, but the guy who did the Monster logo, and he's done a bunch of other stuff for the Monster and all the different layouts. And I look at that, and I look at how it's, dark colors, but there's this, that bright greens and stuff like that to really pop out the, it gives it that, like, kind of like, it gives it that saturation, and that gives it that, that color to it that really makes it pop. And that's the type of stuff that I really, really love doing, and that's the stuff that I excel at. But, it's just constantly watching it and trying to replicate stuff like that for other people and other brands and other stuff like that. And finally, I just, something clicked, and it just all of a sudden came to me.
I missed that click.
What would you consider your style, Evan, and how did you come to claim it as your style?
I don't know. I would say probably I have a style, but I don't think I think one of my big problems is that I jumped around a lot through my career. So I spent a lot of years in designing for the screen, and then doing web development, and then doing drawing and photography and stuff way back when, and then I still I went a lot of years where I didn't draw anything, and then so when I get back into trying to illustrate something or trying to design something, I feel I've never really found a style that I like, and that I haven't just haven't had time to really refine it like I wish I could. So that's set me back. So it looking back, there's a lot of things that I wish I could have put more time into, and just helped, just tried to figure it out more and master it more, or not master it, but at least get better at it. But for me, working full time, for instead of freelancing, just full time jobs, it was chasing the dollar around was getting in the way of really finding a style to hone in on and figure it out. So that's my next goal in life is to figure out what my style is and try to actually turn it into something. We'll see if that happens, but
I think that's the great thing about being an artist who gets paid. I mean, we get to develop.
Yeah.
What my style is now, I guarantee in a year from now is going to be in a different direction. And I think I listened to, I forget who said it. It was one, I was watching a couple of the older podcasts, and somebody said initially we're practicing. Clients are paying us to practice, and I totally believe that. I almost think it's in the job description. It's like, I had a client come to me one time and say, I want to pay you to do something that's going to stretch you a little, and I want you to take your time. And I told the client right over the phone, I was like, I love you. I'm in love with you. You're basically paying me to do what kind of on the sly I'm doing with every client, is I'm practicing and developing and pushing. But he just came right out and said it. He was like, I have an idea of an illustration I want you to do, and I want you to take your time, and I'm going to pay you good for it, but I want it to be really good. I want you to try new things on it. And I thought in my head, really what I thought is, this is what I do with every client. I just don't tell them. I'm practicing and developing my style to push it a little further each time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say my style's constantly evolving. I started out, whenever I first started doing a lot of design work, I did a lot of grunge style stuff.
That was
real dark.
I don't know what it was.
real dark and that kind of stuff. And then I sort of went into that cubic art, sort of fractal style for a while. And recently I've been doing a lot of illustration and especially a lot of sketching to just sort of expand my creativity a little bit into my other areas. But my real specialty or passion is actually web design and programming. I just don't post a lot of that work, but I'm always doing that kind of stuff. I don't know how exactly I got into it. I just one day I just thought to myself, it'd be cool to make a website, and looked up some basic tutorials and stuff like that, and then did a bunch of experimentation, and just kind of grew from there, and I love it. So it's just gotta find something that makes you excited for the next project. So if illustration's your thing, if that's what you like to do, then go for it. Or if social media design or print design or t-shirt design, there's so many different fields you can go into. And
man, do it all.
Yeah, man, do it all. Do it all if you want.
Seriously, why? No, but seriously, when I'm at design school, my design school offers I'm in the graphic design program. Now, the cool thing about my design school is that if we have that itch, if you with art, and I think just period, and this is kind of how I've been since I was little, there is not one art that you're 100% into alone. Like every other art just is like, oh, I don't like it. You're into everything. I mean, honestly, illustrators love to draw, which is fine arts, and drawers love to paint, which is another fine art. And, with me with our school is that I love graphic design, but I really want to get into illustration, and there's different classes at our school that does it's drawing cars, that type of concept art is whatever. I don't remember what it's exactly called. I mean, I'm gonna probably get killed for saying that, but
it's concept art, isn't it? Yeah.
I think that's what it is. But there's so many different things, and for me, I was just interested in illustration, so I took an illustration class, and they let you do that, as they even if you're like in a certain I'm in the design program, they put you into illustration, and they'll let you take whatever you want. Like I remember one of my buddies did glass blowing just because he was bored, and it was just, you can do whatever the hell you want. It's as long as you're interested in it, they let you do whatever you want. You don't have one major, which is what I really like.
I think that is amazingly important. As I was developing artists in the art department, I forced them to do things outside of their normal discipline, of designing.
It's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah, but the thing is, as you push people, when you're working for somebody, they're pushing you. When you get out on your own, I think it's crucial that you push yourself into all areas of creativity, because it helps. I mean, there's not any time that I'm not sitting doing an illustration or a piece of type that I'm not dragging all my other experiences into that, And the more experiences you have to pull from, the more diverse of an artist and better artist you're going to be. The less experiences you have to pull from, the more narrow of a scope you're going to have and a creative ability. So I think, just like you said, you're in classes and you can take any class. When I went to college, I took as many classes as I could. I didn't care about the trajectory of graduating or getting a degree. I mean, really, I went to 3.5 years. I bailed after 3.5 years only because and got 0 degrees. Only because I took classes. I was like, oh, 2-dimensional design. Oh, 3D. We're doing wire sculpture. I'll take that. Oh, color theory. Oh, I like that.
You didn't know what you wanted to do.
I didn't care. I just wanted experiences.
Well, yeah, like my buddy does video game design, and he's in my program now. I mean, you can sit in classes and do whatever the hell you want. You don't even have to take it as a class. You can come and just sit down and do whatever the hell you want.
Also, I think it's important to be versed in all types of design, because sometimes you'll have to design something that's going to be used in other areas, and having that knowledge of how things work and are displayed in other areas of design, like t-shirts and websites and stuff like that, the difference between those mediums, knowing how that works and how they differentiate from each other, is just good knowledge to have to deliver an effective product to a client.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Amen.
I think we hit that point in the show where everybody just starts going, okay.
we just got so deep that we can't even understand how deep.
We're in book writing territory right now. Kronos asked if Jared's going to be a regular. I don't think he has time for us on a weekly basis.
Weekly basis, no, but I wouldn't mind coming back. I mean, I dig, hanging out with you guys and talk. I always take opportunities to talk shop and hanging out with other creatives. So definitely have me back. If you'll have me back, I'll come back.
It was definitely inspirational hearing how you started to where you are now. I mean, that's exactly what I've put in my mind. That's what I want to do. I want to get to, I want to go through all of it, and then eventually I want to start my own business.
Yeah.
We did get that question earlier about what is your current goal with designing? Where do you want to sort of get to, or have you already gotten to the point where you want to be?
Me?
Anybody? I think
just everybody. I'm not even close to where I want to be. I want to be, eventually successful in my own business, but that's years down the road. I think I'm young.
You're in the knowledge building area.
I don't know. It's not real. That's the thing that people really get so misconstrued. Is design school doesn't teach you how to design. It teaches you what to the programs. They teach you okay, this is how you use the marquee tool. You click, drag, and here's a square. It's there's really no there's no filter with your thoughts in your mind portrayed onto a canvas. It's not like that at all, because every person has a different thought in their mind with what would look better. That's why it's so good to be with a group of people and try to design, kind of have that creative director, like you were saying, is give somebody a fresh look on a project. And that's kind of the thing with my design school, is they teach you how to look with a fresh look, but at the same time they can't teach you how to, design a logo. You know what I mean? They teach you the tricks to get from point A to point B, but not that exact thought and the exact style of what you're doing.
Yeah. I don't know. Actually, that's a question for Jared. Do you have any advice on how to get into that mindset? Is there, when you get a client that kind of sort of has an idea but not really, not scoped out all the way, but and you gotta do.
Yeah, we talked about that in another one we all asked.
What's that?
We talked about that in the another episode, and we all kind of were just
yeah,
I don't know what to do, man.
Because there's the research phase, but then there's the concepting phase and tricks to just get your brain to spark.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
Yeah, for me that's part of my job. Yeah. I mean, a lot of clients come to me and they're wanting to brainstorm with me. They're wanting to rely on, conceptually or just speaking ideas, but they want to build ideas, and so you have to be versed in that. And the only thing I can tell, other designers, in order to get to that point, you have to put in a lot of time and effort. You have to be studying other artists. You have to be doing a lot of drawing and illustrating and, conceptually get your mind outside of the idea that you have to find a concept with a pencil or with a mouse. You have to be conceptualizing in your head. Mm-hmm. And then, once I never take pencil to paper unless we've agreed on a concept, because that's a nightmare. I mean, if because you're actually working, you're scheduling time, and that's time to get paid, and you want to make sure the project is moving, at a steady pace, and you're moving towards an end result. So if I brainstorm with a client, then once we're done and we decide, okay, yeah, that's the concept, I really like it, it's sign off at that point that you like that concept and that's what we're working on. And then I go into a very rough sketch. We're just looking at composition. We're just looking at, you know, not any major details. We're just looking at, and I post that a lot on my Instagram. I'll do just here's the rough sketch. I'm just feeling out the forms right now, and I send that off to the client. And once they're like, love it, good to go, then I do a finished pencil. And then from there, I get another approval, and then I move to the vector, and that's it. So
I was wondering that whenever you're talking earlier about how you don't involve your clients a lot in the sort of creative process.
Yeah, where's the break? Like, where is it? Like, when a client is like telling you when do you say enough? Let me do my thing.
The first phone call.
Seriously?
I try to smash it out. I try to smash it out in that if a client hits me up, and what I do is, and I've given this to Evan, you know, if a client hits me, you get the hey, I like your stuff. What are your pricing? I have what's a qualifying email. I send it out to them. It's a crafted email. I send it out to them. I want to know your name, your brand. I want to see all your social media. I want to hear a scope of the project. I want to hear a timeline, and I want to hear your budget.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an easy, quick fire email for me. You know, I fire it off, and I'm back to work. When they fill that out and I assess what they want, if I determine it's a phone call after that we got to hash it out, and I want the project, I shoot them another email. You know, let's get on the phone. Let's schedule a consult. We get on the phone. I'm looking to hash out that concept if they don't have it already on that phone call. And that's what I tell them. I'm accepting the project. Have you accepted the pricing? Yeah, okay. Let's spend a half hour and hash out that concept right now. Let's brainstorm. And I like brainstorming because, you know, it's something I taught my artists. You know, there really is no stupid idea, because if Joe in the corner just says black, it could get somebody else thinking about, you know, black snake, black sky, black moon, and then this guy goes, yeah, black snake, okay, black snake, and we just start brainstorming, and eventually we come up with a concept. And if you're not afraid to say ideas, you come to concepts pretty quick. It's free thinking. You know, you're just thinking, you're free thinking. And within a half hour, we come up with a concept, and we're like, I dig it, do you dig it? And then if you're both vibing it and you're liking it, we're like, okay, you want to sign off on that, and I'll move towards the rough sketch. I don't spend a lot of time. You know, there are the clients who want to spend a ton of time talking about it, and I simply tell them, first phone call's free. The next phone call, I'm charging you a consultation rate. I'm charging you a conceptual fee. We're gonna, because you're asking me for my ideas.
Yeah.
My talent isn't in the pencil. I mean, I've taught my hand how to draw, but the talent is the relationship between my ideas and the pencil. You know, how I'm going to execute that. So if you want to get on a second phone call, you're going to start paying me to consult for your brand. I just don't waste time with clients. You know? If you're wasting time is mine.
How often, if at all, do you show a client like a work in progress? Like, what intervals do you show them work, or do you just get the concept from them and then deliver the finished product?
That depends on the client. If I know the client's gonna micromanage me, I don't show them concepts. I mean, I'm moving right to, this is it. I sell it to them because I feel good about it. This is it. We're moving on. Other clients, I enjoy their feedback. I invite them in on the process. And the thing is, too, a lot of my clients follow me on Instagram, and if they don't make me sign a non-disclosure, I'm usually posting as I'm working. So if the client is following me, they're seeing their stuff, you know, before I've even prepped it up and emailed it to them. You know, it's sitting on Instagram, and they're looking at it. So
that makes sense.
But it depends on the client. I don't let the micromanager clients. I won't send them step by step by step, all the little pieces. The clients I'm vibing with, like I just finished 2 jobs with Under Armour, and me and the art director hit it off so good. The dude he was raw. He had a really good sense of design. He knew what he wanted. I invited him in on, I mean, every inch of the sketch. As I was drawing it, I was sending it to him, and he had his input, and we were vibing off each other, and it worked really well, you know. So I knew I could just invite him in on the process. I guess you just got to feel the clients out. You got to know when to show stuff and when to just go.
It's a lot about experience, much like designing itself is a lot about experience. Client management is just something that you have to partake in over and over and over until you really get good at it, and you can sort of tell from the start when a client's going to be good for you and isn't, or a client that's going to give you viable feedback on what they want. You know, it's just something that takes a lot of practice to get good at.
Well, not only that, I think that's really important. You have to, if you're an artist and you want to be a freelancer or have your own business, you have to have supreme systems. I mean, you really do. And these systems are put in place to keep you guarded and to keep your projects moving along. Because if you don't, it's not just art. I mean, I think a lot of artists go into this whole, I want to do my own business or be a freelancer, and they think it's just the art. And it's like, no, you better have supreme systems on how to interact with your client, how to consult with them, everything to invoicing to keep the project moving, how to schedule them, how to communicate with them, how to keep everything going. So it's a lot of systems. It is experience, but systems will clear out a lot of bad clients for you really fast, or they'll really make you show who are the good clients, you know?
Yep.
Systems and processes.
Yeah, getting your processes and sort of steps and how you're going to take on a project is something to nail down pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Get that in place. Well, Jared, we really appreciate you coming on, and we'll be happy to welcome you on at other times. We'll pencil you in as a substitute and get you on as often as we can. But thanks everybody for coming out to the stream. We will be posting this on the YouTube channel probably on Friday. We're still sort of in the preliminary talks of doing 2 episodes a week. So we're not sure how that's going to shake out yet, if we're going to do that or not. Depends on scheduling and that type of thing. It's already somewhat of a nightmare, so so we got to kind of get our stuff together as far as that's concerned.
They're all in the chat, and they're like, "Why doesn't Rated talk?" And I'm like, "Dude, I have nothing to say."
If you hear real faint, there's an echo, and that's Rated. That's Rated's thoughts. Real faint echo.
Yeah, we got to have Jared on again, and I every time I talk to you, Jared, I learn so much. It's ridiculous. And
yeah, I honestly, my mind is just kaboom.
Well, dude, I appreciate it. I take any opportunity to hang out with you guys. Like I said, I was listening to a couple other podcasts. I think you guys you're awesome. I was loving you guys chopping on each other and kicking it around. So, you know, if it's in my schedule every other week or something, I'd be glad to come back.
Cool.
Hell yeah,
Very cool.
It was awesome to have you on.
Happy to have you for sure. So, guys, check us out on our Twitter. It's at Ctrl+Z Cast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Ctrl+Z Cast as well. And we have the Spreaker account as well, which is Spreaker.com/Ctrl_Z, I believe, if you want to hear the audio version. So check us out, and we'll have episode 10 up tomorrow on the YouTube channel and the audio version up on Friday, and we may also have the replay of this live stream on Friday as well. Again, we'll discuss that, but we appreciate you guys coming out to the stream. We may be doing more live episodes soon. I think it helps with the fan interaction and stuff like that. So I kind of like it, but we'll obviously make that determination and let you guys know. Anything else to add before we wrap it up, guys?
No. We'll see you next time.
Later.
See you guys.
Fuel 10% off gfuel.com. Just go to We don't have Josh. We didn't even slip it in. I was like,
yeah, I know, dude. Josh
everybody
is
starts slugging their brand before it goes off the air.
All right, guys, that's it for us.
All right, take it easy.